welcome to Gray Roots, where we dive into the messiness of relationships across the generations. I am one of your hosts, Alicia Warnicki, and today we're exploring a topic that many parents grapple with, how to navigate a healthy and supportive relationship with your adult children or adult child. So if you're an adult and you have a parent, or if you're a parent and you have an adult child, or if you're a parent whose child has not grown and flown yet, listen up. There are some gold nuggets in here for all of us. So, first, just wanted this is something that is near and dear to my heart. Just so y'all kind of have a little background, if you haven't been listening, my husband and I have three grown boys. They're men. They are currently 26. Almost 34 and 29. And they are definitely all out of the house. We are official empty nesters. Everybody's off the payroll. And it gets tricky as they are adults, right? Because you're still their parent, but the relationship has to shift. And I think that is probably the first thing that I want to talk about is understanding the shift that happens. There's like this evolution of the parent-child relationship, right? And the dynamic shifts. You start out with this little baby. They need you 100% of the time. If they don't have their parent, especially their mother, they die, right? And then maybe they get to where they're, say, toddling around, 2, 3 preschool. They can do a lot of things for themselves, but they still need us as parents to give them good boundaries, good activities. We help with their friends, all of those things. And it just kind of keeps going. Then you have grade schoolers, a little bit more independent. So you go from having 100% control of this child, which they need, and the goal is to get to 0% of control with that adult child once they leave, that they would be completely sufficient on their own without you. Now, obviously, we want to keep that relationship. But some of the challenges, common challenges, I think that parents face is adjusting to those changes in authority and expectations. Kathy, Carrie, have y'all experienced any of that kind of rub with any of your children? And maybe it could be something that was when they were teenagers. I know that kind of tends to be a pinnacle where the kids are like, I don't need you. I know everything. I'm going to move out. You're like, okay, let me help you pack your bag. Also, give me all your shoes and everything and your phone and everything that we paid for. But what have you guys experienced as some of the common challenges that you have had as your kids have kind of gone through this process? Carrie?
Yeah, something that I wish we did in our society was that we had a rite of passage that was a direct, like, okay, you were a boy, now you're a man, and we don't do that here. I remember Kurt was threatening taking Taylor out into the woods with a loincloth and, like having him kill an animal to just, say, okay, here, you were a boy, now you're a man. Like, we don't have that here in society. There's not a set time or age. And so I think that is a huge thing here that we don't have. So we don't know when that time happens. They don't know when that time happens. And for me, I have 4 boys and a girl at that time. And in middle school, it was rough. It was rough, especially with them not having their dad here. So I had to be both mom and dad. So our situation's a little bit different. But everybody's is different. So I think for me, I had to remember that they're going through so much, their emotions, and then, boys go through stuff too, like girls do. And so, man, I had to hunker down, grab onto that roller coaster ride and snap that seatbelt in and just hold on and be there steady and they're constant, even though they were flailing and going all over the place. So I think that was an important thing for me to remember,
Kathy,
just be constant and be steady.
Yeah, be that like you're saying, that constant thing in their life that doesn't change, so they know where ground zero is. Kathy, have you experienced anything where kind of that shift of power, struggles that happen with that, either with any of your kids or parents that you deal with? with your
Well,
other
I think it's a
business?
constant. Yeah, I think it's kind of a push and pull, right? Is what I see happen as they move into the teenage years. They're like, I don't need you, so they push you away, and then like, but wait, I do need you. Wait, I don't need this from you because I know it.
Hmm.
I need to ask you this. And so you see that it's just constant. It's just, you never know. Am I supposed to come in and give advice? Am I supposed to back up? Am I supposed to let them fall? Am I supposed to jump in? So it
Mm,
really is this kind of dance that you do with these teenage boys, especially, but our girls too. I mean,
mhm.
again, I think we in our society have gotten too rigid of putting boys over here, girls over here. Listen, as you said, Carrie,
Yeah.
our boys are experiencing big emotions. Big emotions. It just looks
Hmm.
different. When boys experience that big emotion of trying to break free, it looks like anger often. Our
Mm,
girls, I mean, it looks like anger in girls too, but usually in girls, it comes out as anxiety. It comes out as disordered eating. That's more common when a
Mm.
lot of them, but it's really big emotion on both sides. And so I think it's just, I mean, I've seen it with all my kids as they've approached adulthood. They've all had some big emotion that I've seen kind of present itself as something else that I've had to help navigate and realize, okay, this is big emotion. This
mhm.
is them being nervous that they're about to go to college. This is them being nervous they're
Mm,
about to get married. This is them
Hmm.
being anxious about big things, their brother dying, whatever. You see those big emotions, but again, in kids often it looks like other stuff. So I think recognizing that as they move towards adulthood and helping them recognize that as they move towards adulthood.
yeah. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, and I had the experience of only having boys because that's all we had. Uh, Kind of to what you're saying with that, with their emotions and everything, Kathy. And I don't know if you guys experience this as well with your boys, but with mine, they would hit like that 11 to 14-year-old age, somewhere in there. And that pushback toward me as their mother was immense. It was
Yeah.
like, I do not need a mommy, almost to where they like it was
Mm,
like really harsh rejection of just, I don't need you. And again, those emotions to me all came across as, they're rejecting you, they don't want you, they were mean to me, they were doing stuff that like a year or two before they never would have done, said, all of that, just kind of all those emotions kind of taking over their body. Did y'all have that same type of experience with your boys?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Carrie?
remember I remember telling Tanner, I can picture it like it was yesterday. He was in his room and just being an asshole. I was like, "Tanner, I am on your team. I am your biggest cheerleader. Stop treating me the way you're treating me. Stop being an asshole." I mean, he was the last of
I love that.
the kids, so I'm
I
like,
love that.
I
Yeah.
am done fluffing it
Yeah.
up, but I am here for you. I love you, but stop treating me like that. You're not going to treat me
Yeah.
like that.
How did he respond to
I think
that?
they don't know what to do. They don't know what
Hmm.
to do with those big emotions. So again,
Hmm.
it's what I tell every parent. We're their safest person. That's why we get it, you guys. It really should be the biggest compliment, even though it feels like it's rejection. It really is the biggest compliment that we are their safe space. And that's what all those big emotions they're having to keep inside at school, at work, as they are becoming an adult, figuring out puberty, figuring out their body changing. We, especially the women, the moms, not the women, but the moms, the one who's with them primarily, whoever the primary caregiver is, they're the safe spot. So they're
Hmm.
going to get the brunt
Yeah.
of those big emotions.
Yeah. Carrie, how did Tanner respond to that?
I don't know if that was the best thing to say to him, but he didn't say anything, and I think maybe he had to then bottle up some of those feelings that needed to come out, but also for me to provide a space to talk to him, so we could talk. He and I could talk about school and could talk about
Yeah.
things, and so I felt like he started respecting the relationship a little bit more. I mean, he and I have a great relationship now. Um,
Yeah.
so I think it was a kind of an awareness and awakening of his own emotions and how he's taken that out and how he was treating
Yeah.
me and maybe other people too.
Yeah. I love that you were able to kind of point that out to just like point blank, like, hey, listen, like I see what you're doing here and that's not okay. Um, I know you did all that as a single parent. I remember with our oldest son, Andrew, and he hit it early. It was like around 11, 10. He was a sweet boy and would do things with me and, watch movies and let me rub your hair all back, all that stuff. And then like 11 years old, and he was just like, I don't need you. You should just move out. It just, he was all the motions again. And I remember my husband, Jeff, having to like stand up and basically do the same thing and be like, hey, listen, I'm going to treat you like you're my son right now because you are. But if you treat my wife like that again, I'm going to treat you like any other man. And it's
Mhm.
not going to end well. Don't treat my wife like that. And I
Mhm.
think again, like with Andrew, that kind of resonated with him. Like, oh, okay, you see me, you see that I'm a man, and he was 11, so not quite, but like I think that's what they're going for, right? They're trying to assert their
Mhm.
independence. Um, anyway, so shifting from that, right? You have this. We're evolving. You've got the teenagers, and then eventually they grow out of that, hopefully, and they kind of move out. Um, After that, you know, y'all tell me about struggles that you've had with, because I know I have definitely had some with, like, they're adults, they're out of the house. And maybe I'm seeing some things that they're doing that aren't so wise or not beneficial for them or things they could do better. Um, and how to communicate that to them because they're out and they could completely be on their own. So anything that I'm contributing uh, felt a little bit stifling for them, almost kind of like I was still trying
Mhm.
to control them, you know?
Mhm.
Tell me, Kathy,
Mhm.
tell me some experiences that you've had with that.
I, I mean, it's again, I go back to this hard dance. It's, are they adults? Yes, they're. I always tell my kids, it's funny that you said the rite of passage. I always tell my kids they were adults when they were no longer on the payroll. That
Mhm.
if I was still supporting them financially, it was real hard for me to consider them fully adults. I mean, if they still needed to
It's
come
true.
here for the pocketbook. So once they get off the payroll, um, at that point our relationship shifts from parent to more of a friend type,
Mhm.
so I think more,
Mm-hmm.
if it were a friend, what kind of advice would I give them? Would I insert myself? Now
Mm.
that is hard because sometimes I insert myself where I am not wanted, and
Mhm.
so it's harder with between boys and girls. For me, I do see a difference, especially if my boys are married, because again, I want to be
Mm.
careful with that daughter-in-law. And so I do have, I mean, as far as specific examples, I'm probably not, don't feel comfortable necessarily sharing specific examples of that, but I definitely have
Yeah.
had where conversations have been hard, assumptions have been hard. I've
Mhm.
definitely given advice that was unwanted,
Mm.
because I'm a strong personality and have strong opinions. And again, it goes back to wisdom that we have. You want to save them from some of that pain. Let's just throw out credit card debt. Not who
Yeah.
knows, we made that credit card, right? You just see how much credit card debt can hold someone down and grip them.
Mhm.
So you want to say, hey, be careful with that. Maybe you should buy a used this thing instead of going to buy a brand new one and put it on a credit card. Maybe you could find something on Facebook Marketplace, maybe not quite as great, but those are the things that have to be real quiet, and
Mhm.
because they don't want to hear that.
Mm.
Anyway, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's been my
Yeah.
experience.
Oh yeah,
So,
I think that makes complete sense. And I think one of the things that fosters really good communication with, I think number one, healthy communication is a key. It's a key thing that has to happen in order to have those good relationships with our adult children. And I
sure.
think the biggest thing we can do for that is to just listen, actively listen to what they're saying in a respectful way. So without jumping in for solutions for them. I don't know how many times, I've sat with my husband Jeff, especially early on in our marriage, and be like, "Well, this is happening, and this is happening, and oh my gosh, and I can't get that to do that." And he's like, "Oh, well, you just do this, 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 and this." I'm like, I don't need you to solve my problems, right? I'm not doing, but to me, it came across as, oh, well, you're clearly not smart enough to figure this out on your own. So let me help you fix that. And, that's a lot of difference between men and women. But I think as parents, that comes across the same way with adult children. If I'm solving your problem for you, then you clearly are not capable of doing it yourself. Otherwise, I'd just let you,
Hmm.
right? Um, I'd love to talk about some ways that we can do that to actively listen and not jump in with solutions or judgment that they feel. Do y'all have any tips or tricks for our folks out there on on how to do that? I know. So for me, literally, I will bite my tongue. Not hard, but I've talked about how my mouth is probably my biggest asset and my worst liability. And if I just kind of give a little, like, okay, like in my mouth, it's just kind of a little reminder of stop talking and keep listening. Ask
Hmm.
questions about what they're doing.
Hmm.
How about y'all?
Yeah. Well, I think it doesn't start right when they become adults, that relationship. So it's a matter of looking back and like fostering that relationship throughout the years of being a listener, right? If we're just
Yes.
bossy, bossy,
Yeah.
bossy, telling you what to do from morning to night, scheduling out your life all the time, then of course we're going to need to do that when they're older. And then they're not
Yeah.
going to have the
Right.
tools
Right.
to be on their own. So it's a matter of like thinking about what does that relationship look like when they're younger. It does matter. It does matter when we show up in a certain way, or kind of release the reins a little bit when they're in middle school. Let them figure some things out.
Hmm.
Let them problem solve on
Yes.
their own in
Yes.
high school, rather than telling them everything they need to do as moms, because we're so good at that. I know I was too. So that when they're adults, that relationship will just continue. It just looks different now. Um, so that might just be something to think about. But now that they're adults, it's the same. I'm the same, Alicia. Sometimes I'll want to say something, but also I have to remember that it's their journey, not mine. If somebody
That's
would have
good.
told me some things, I wouldn't have learned a lot of the things that I learned. So they are
Right.
going to fail. They might have credit card debt. I did tons, and just
Hmm.
had to learn some things through that, and to know that I don't want to hinder them from learning. Although it is hard. It's so, yep. I just
Yeah.
gotta just and be here. Like again, remember we talked about unsolicited advice. We're here to listen. If you ask me for advice on something, it's free. I'm gonna tell you. But if you don't, then we just gotta be quiet, and that's not
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah. And I think, that goes to, again, like supporting their independence when they get to that point and encouraging their autonomy. And that doesn't just start in a vacuum when they are all of a sudden out of the house, right? That needs to kind of be, like Kathy was saying, a give and take of giving them a little rope and then taking some back, giving a little and taking some back until they get to the point where they have more of the rope than you do. Um,
Hmm.
I would love to talk about uh, how we handle our kids' mistakes before they're all the way out of the house, right? Like how much of that rope do we hold on to? Um, and I'm gonna throw this out there. People may judge me for being like bad parent, like, oh, that's why your kids were so wild, did this, whatever. But we were very much probably on one extreme end of it. Um, I remember Andrew came home from school and said, told us at like 10 o'clock the night before, I have a science fair project due tomorrow, 10 o'clock at night. I was so mad. And Jeff is like, Alicia, don't you jump in. Don't you jump in and save that project. Cause I love science fair projects. Uh, and so I went to Walmart. I'm like, give me a list of what you need. I went to Walmart, got all the things, dropped off the bags with them at the table and said, all right, well, good luck with that. I'll see you in the morning because it's now 11 o'clock. I'm going to bed. And he had to like that was a major grade. How did y'all handle things like that? Where it's almost like I kind of felt like I was setting him up to fail, but at the same time, if I don't let him fail in fourth grade, then I'm going to be doing this the whole time in high school. And I know different people have different takes on that. So
Yeah.
what are y'all's opinions on things like
Yeah.
that?
So Taylor he's a doctor now, but he was late to school. And we have a carload of kids who are also going to be late if he's late. And so if my kids were late, I said, we're leaving at a certain time. Bye. I'm leaving. I'm driving out of the driveway. You are staying, like I would do it. I'm not going to threaten, hey, I'm leaving. It's time to
Yeah.
go, blah, blah, blah. Nope. If you're not in the car and you're not ready, bye. And then also one of the kids forgot their shoes time and time and time again. Okay, you forgot your shoes. You're going to school without shoes.
Yes.
Sorry, not my problem. So I'm right there with you, Alicia.
Yeah. Yeah. How about you, Kathy? You come from an education background, so um, what have you what have you got for us?
I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't think there's one right answer. I think it's the situation. I think it's the child. I think if it's something you're trying to teach them through, it's what they're known for, and you're really trying to help them work through it. I can see that. I mean, I think with the science fair project, you did go get the stuff at 10 o'clock. I think there are
Yeah.
plenty of parents who have said, not even doing that, too late. I would have gone probably and gotten the stuff and probably sat there and held their hand until they got it done, to be honest. Um, Again, I don't think there's a right answer. I think
Yeah,
anybody who
no, I
comes
don't
at you
either.
with parenting advice saying this is the way you do it for every child, you know what? We
That's
don't
true.
know each other's stories. You don't know the family situation. You don't know the dynamics. You don't know. I mean, I have done some of it. I have waited around and given a kid every opportunity. I have left them. They have gone to church with two different shoes on. I mean, it's been every combination of, and I'm sure there were
Yeah.
mistakes along the way. But I will say my goal was relationship first. And I think that
Mm,
for me, it's got to be the focus. If our focus as parents, when they're little, is relationship first, and then as adults, we continue that, that really does shape the conversations. And even now, when I jump in too soon, at least I catch myself and can say, you know what,
mhm,
I shouldn't have said that. You're right. It is your decision.
Mm.
And I will tell
mhm.
them, listen, it is hard because I have experienced similar, and I just want to share that wisdom with you in hope of saving you some of the pain, just like you do with little kids. But knowing that natural consequences is also part of the learning. And so, but I verbalize that to even my adult kids. Say, this is hard for me because I have so much I want to say, but unless you're asking for my advice, I'm not going to say it.
Mm.
Whew, Kath, I love
Or
that. And you hit on humility too, and as parents being humble enough to apologize and recognize
yeah.
when, and
Yeah.
just communicating that to them, I think is huge.
And I try to carry that on with my daughter-in-laws. Honestly, I've tried to carry that on with anyone because different phases in my life, you girls know I have been the most judgmental of judgmental and had definitely been hurtful to people with that judgment and that
Mm,
judgmental attitude and spirit. And so I've gone back to people, I mean, 5, 10 years later and say, will you forgive me for jumping to conclusions, for assuming,
mm,
for saying something out of line that really
Mm.
wasn't my place. I think it's always okay to go back and work on repair and restoration with our children for sure.
mm, hmm. Absolutely.
Mm. Kathy, I know you've been talking, but I'm gonna hit you up again for this because I've heard you
Okay.
do this, and you just have a wealth of wisdom with just you're so good at this. Talking about fostering communication
Oh, the pressure.
and building that relationship.
Yeah.
The pressure. Give
The
us some
pressure.
examples of, because I am not good at this. I'm a very good yes or no question asker, and I think part of that
Okay.
for me is I want to know the answer so I can like move on, right?
Right.
What are some
Yes. You are
examples
task
of
oriented.
questions?
Task oriented.
Yes. What are some examples of questions and phrases that can foster an open dialogue with our adult children and kind of draw them in so we can learn more, and
Yeah.
it kind of opens them up to talking to us?
Well, it's interesting. Again, I hate to always say it goes back to when they're little, but this starts when they're young. When you ask yes and no questions, you really don't open up communications. But when you ask even young children questions like, oh, instead of saying, what did you do at school today? When a kid's going to say nothing, then
Mm-hmm.
you would say, tell me more about that. You had art class today. What are some things the teacher said? Or if I saw you were playing with your friend Jack. Tell me some things you and Jack did. What did Jack say when you said this? So you kind of lead the conversation when they're little and invite them to expand on that. as they get adults, it's just similar. Like, if a child was an adult, sorry, if an adult was struggling with a job, so what is the part that really is causing you anxiety? Is there a particular person that you see that you're struggling with? When you arrive at the office, how does that make you feel? As you leave in the evenings, tell me more about that. I'm so curious as to why that upsets you so much. So you want to say phrases and things that allows them to talk more. You want to invite
Mm-hmm.
them to talk more by, I want to hear more about that. What does that look like for you? Can you
Mhm.
draw a picture with your words so I can better understand that? When you do that, especially if you've done that along, the child is used to you doing that. And so
Mm-hmm.
they're going to just naturally kind of open up more. But if you haven't done that, you still can. I mean, don't say it's too late
Mhm.
to do it when they're little. You can start with that. Mostly involves you being quiet and
Mm.
being willing to listen. Like once you ask the question, then you shush
Mhm.
and let there be some
Yeah.
silence and let there be some uncomfortable
Yeah.
time where they can respond.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. And
Mhm.
yeah, become
Mhm.
like I'm always trying to be a sounding board, but
Mm-hmm.
then I want my board to sound back to tell them what they should do. Right.
Yeah.
And
Same.
like, that's so hard for me. I'm just like, yeah, like I'd love to hear more about that. Like how, and even maybe asking, how can I support you with that? And what does that
Absolutely.
look like for you? Right? What does it
And
look
are
like to
you,
cheer you on and be in your corner? Kathy.
and sorry to interrupt, but I was like, yes. And say things like, hey, are you asking for my advice or do you just need to talk about it? You
Mhm.
know,
Yes.
because so many times, because Sarah is great. And she, again, my kids have all given me permission to share stories. So if I say their name, I know they're okay with it. Sarah will say things like, Mom, I really am not looking for your advice. I just need to get it out. And so, because
Mm.
she knows that her mom wants to just get in there and solve it. Mom,
Yeah.
I just need to tell you. And so I'm like, zip it. Mm,
Mhm.
listen.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like I tell my grandchildren, are your listening ears turned on? Have you turned on your listening
Oh my
ears?
gosh.
Yeah.
Turn them
I
on.
say that with my
Turn them on.
kids too.
Yes.
Turn on your
Yes.
Yes. Turn them on.
listeners.
Yes. So I have to remember that for myself. Are my listening ears on? Because usually I'm like, oh, girl, I could solve that in 3 words or less. Can
Yes.
you solve
Right.
2 words or less? I can
Yeah.
solve that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I think kind of as the relationship grows, as you're building that relationship, the communication, um, and obviously this is with any adult, right? I mean, you think about like people that you're friends with, there has to be a sense of mutual respect and
Mm,
understanding, empathy for what they're going through, kind of putting yourself in their shoes of, trying to remember when I was younger and my mom was trying to tell me what to do. Like, how did that come across to me? Did that even change
right.
what my decision was? Most of the time it did, but not the way that she wanted it to. It was like, oh, okay, yeah, I see where you're going
Rebellious
with that. Nope,
child, you.
nope, I'm gonna go over here. I mean,
Yep.
heaven forbid she actually knows something after being on this planet for longer than me, right? Um, but I think that mutual respect and understanding goes a long way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The empathy, putting yourself in their shoes, remembering what it was like for us parents of the adult children, when we were that age. Um, Another thing that I love to do with my adult children, and they don't always love it when I want to do this. So it's a little sad for me sometimes because I'm like, oh, but I love celebrating achievements and milestones that they have made. I have had a couple of my boys that they're like, listen, I know you think that that's really great that I did that, but I don't really see that as even being above average. So I don't want to be
Oh,
celebrated for that. Kind of breaks my heart, but I love celebrating achievements and milestones. What are some ways that you all have done that with your adult children? Carrie?
You mean like celebrating them?
Yeah, yeah. Different achievements. Like, I mean, Taylor is, I mean, he's a white coat. He's a
Yeah.
doctor now. I'm sure there were many
Yeah.
milestones along the way to celebrate for that because that's a long
Yeah. I think
process.
for us, it's showing up. It's being there, showing up to the white coat ceremony, driving the 3 hours it took to get there. Tommy's shows. Whenever he had a show, we're there. No matter how late it was or, where it was, we were there, we showed up. So I think being there, even this morning, driving to Atlanta for 15 minutes to see my granddaughter, just being there and showing up is what we try to do.
Yeah.
It's the thing that matters
How
most,
about you?
Carrie. I mean, I don't think there's a thing more important than what Carrie just said. I think showing up, it speaks volumes. I will share, we have an Aunt Deborah, and I will remember John Michael was turning 1 and she drove 6 hours to be at his 1-year-old birthday party, she and her husband Lawrence.
Oh.
And they came to Birmingham. They probably stayed an hour and drove 6 hours back.
Mm.
And they continued that throughout all of my children's childhood. They lived 3 hours from us. They would drive 6 hours round trip for a 15-minute ballet recital, for an awards banquet, for a football game. Even if they could only see the second half because they had to be at work, they would come up,
Wow.
then they would turn around and leave. And my kids talk about that more than any other person other than their parents in their life that has made a difference, is the way that woman showed up. And Jeff and I decided a long time ago, that's the kind of parents we wanted to be, grandparents we wanted to be, that whenever humanly possible, we would show up so that our kids knew that relationship with them was the most important. But if you say it and then you don't do it,
right,
then what are we telling them? Well, you're not really that important. We're telling you
Yeah.
are, but we're not showing up.
And then
But
you
by
lose that respect.
Correct. And by you showing up today, Carrie, and she said her granddaughter didn't see her during the performance, but they were there after or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But she saw her after, and that's what she will remember. She will remember they were there. They were there. It's the number one thing. If you want to have a relationship with your adult children, you freaking show up for what matters to them. Next week, Henry's a pledge with his fraternity. We're in Starkville all week. We're going home on Monday. Just found out he's in a performance on Thursday night. So we'll have been here a whole week.
Oh, gosh.
We'll just get home.
Excuse me.
Guess what we're doing? Turning around and driving 7 hours to come see him in that performance. We are showing up. So I'm glad you said that because I couldn't agree more. I think it's the number one thing.
Yeah.
Probably the thing we got to end on. I see we're about out of time.
Yes.
Yep.
This is a good one.
We are. I want to take just a minute or two to to kind of flip this on its head for a minute. Because I feel like a lot of what we've been saying has been speaking to the parents of the adult children.
Okay.
What are some ways that as parents of adult children, let's say there is a difficult conversation, the relationship is strained, what can our adult children say to us or to be able to kind of bridge that connection, or to come to us and say like, hey, listen, like you did this and I wasn't okay with that. What types of things are we receptive to hearing? And I know we're probably a little more receptive than a lot of other parents might be. But what are some strategies for the adult children to be able to come to the parents that you would like to hear?
I think that's a hard one. Okay, you go. Yep.
I'll go first.
Yep.
One of the things that is like really just kind of like softens my heart with them, and usually that's what's happening, is like there's this tension, is if they come to me individually, right? Not in front of the group or the whole family or whatever, and just say, hey, Mom, I love it when our relationship is tight. I'd love to talk to you about some things so it can get better, because there were a couple things that kind of didn't feel so great. It's in private and it is coming from a place of love. That will like turn me around in a heartbeat from whatever judgmental things or anything like that might be going on in my head.
I'm going to pause for a second though, and let's flip it back.
Okay.
And remember how important it is to give our children that same respect. That if they are, especially if they're married and we have something we need to talk to them about. I'm not saying you do that. I think in general as a society with young kids too, we are quick to correct in front of people, and remember that our
Mm,
kids deserve for us to go to them in private and
mm,
in
Yes.
love. If we're angry, then we need to pause and that not be the time, but we go to them. So great advice, I think. And I too would be tender. I love that. But it reminds me that as parents, we
Both.
have to ask ourselves, are we good at that? Do we do that? So
yeah. Did we model that?
did we model
Yeah.
that? And are we still?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to wrap up on that note. I feel like we're on a like
Yeah.
a warm fuzzy there on kind of how,
Yeah. Yeah.
give you some things that you can kind of ruminate on and go through. So, next week, this kind of springboards into next week's episode where Kathy is going to dive into navigating those adult relationships when the babies come, which adds a whole new dimension
Mm-hmm.
to the relationship, as many of
Yep.
Yeah.
y'all know, especially our young moms out there. So, thank y'all for listening. Thank you for being with us. We would love to connect with you on any of our social media. And we'd
Yes.
love to hear from you. If you have some adult child relationship issues with parents, go ahead and reach out to us. We would love to kind of lock arms with you and help you with all that. So remember to make a small deposit. Maybe you can make it for your adult child or for your adult parent this week. Think of
Yeah.
that's your goal for the week. All right. We will
Love
see
it.
y'all next week and enjoy the day.